Welcome to Wealth Without Borders podcast, the story version. And I'm very privileged and happy to have with me today Mark Suchy. Welcome, Mark.
Oh, thanks, Howard.
And I always ask this, whereabouts in the world are you today and what's the weather like?
I'm in Bali and there's a light breeze and there's a bunch of kites flying high in a blue sky.
Fantastic. Well, I'm in Shanghai, and you know all too well that the fall, or as we call it, the autumn here, is just a magnificent season. So for those of you who don't know Mark, he has been in China for 17 years and in real estate, I think, for 16 years. And he's the managing director for Core Capital Asia, and that's an investment agency based in Shanghai that focuses on real estate investment transactions and debt financing. And then Mark has a fascinating story because he's a Canadian who came to China straight out of university with a one-way ticket and a dream to succeed. And I'm sure many expats can relate to that, Mark.
Yeah, man. I mean, I could spend an hour and a half telling you my first year in China. It's a pretty interesting story, but let's not go too deep.
I'm sure. So it was really that drive for success that led you to become an expat in the first place?
Well, I think I studied international trade when I was going to university, and second year uni, I went to Taiwan for the summer, and I realized that Asia had huge opportunities for growth and my personal development and business future. So I just got fixated on the idea to go back to Taiwan. But when I graduated, it kind of clicked that maybe China would be the better choice.
Right.
So that's where I went.
And I mean, you've been in China for 17 years, which I think is in itself pretty remarkable. I've been here for only 6, so I'm just a beginner. But people who stay in China for that length of time, I think, have certain qualities about them that are quite special. I have my view, but what do you think, what qualities best define an expat who's able to cope with such a long period of time away from home?
I think it's important. There's a couple things. I mean, I think it's important that you have a network of people that you look up to and rely on and you can count on to be good friends. And you need to focus on getting the right people in your life because you're going to meet so many people as an expat, but it's the people that you really respect and, that are kind of in some ways, better than you and that you hook yourself into and then become friends with that allow you to feel comfortable and, give you that need to, stay happy and positive, and you have that kind of family away from your family. That's really critical. And for me, that's been turning over because people come and go all the time, but I've always had like a good group of people, and some leave and some come in, but it stabilizes you. Right.
And then I think that's something I found very important as well, a network of reliable people who are further ahead than I am. Was there one or two people in particular when you first arrived who really helped you?
I don't think so. Like all my really good friends really developed late after being there for a couple of years because I had so much gasoline in the tank. I didn't really need anybody else to refill it for me. And so it was really after, 4 or 5 years that I started developing those relationships that just kept my tank full. And I think another thing that was really important for me was that I did a lot of traveling and I got out of the country, which gave me a lot of time to kind of decompress and get out of China. And I did that quite often. I would travel, 4 or 5 times a year purely for holiday with family or friends, or, to Japan or to Thailand or where, just to get out of China. Because if you spend too much time day in, day out, it starts to wear you down and your tank starts to deplete. So biggest advice is just get out as much as you can, because then you'll stay well balanced.
Right.
That's
yeah. I agree with that. I mean, China is very intense. I think many places are when you're an expat, but burnout is one of the dangers I think expats face if they spend too long in one place. I've been in Shanghai now since December of last year, and well, I'm slightly balding, and it's mostly because I've been tearing my hair out to get out, But there you go. That's just this year. I think that's great advice. And then, do you think there's particular qualities of grit or resilience that are needed, perhaps more so than if one was back home?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you need that kind of positive attitude, and to keep yourself focused and positive, and you have to see the light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how bad things get. Because if you don't have that like longer term vision that everything's going to work out for you and the business is going to come together and your job's going to improve, if you keep focusing on it, then if you don't have that kind of light guiding you, you're going to feel lost. And I've seen a lot of people that never really lasted because they didn't have that kind of long-term vision to ground them. They're looking at this opportunity and that opportunity and this job and like, what about this business? And they weren't focused. And the people that really lasted and the long-term expats that were really happy, generally with their business, they were very committed to a long-term goal of improving in that business. And most, like they say, you change your job 5 or 6 times in your life or what have you. But if you want to survive it as an expat, I really feel that once you find something you're good at and you see a future, you just really need to focus on developing it, because you will so quickly excel. Because, like, for example, for me, when I started in real estate, I was playing poker, and this guy was like, "Oh, you should do commercial real estate." I was like, "What is that on TV? Like, what does that even mean?" And it was office leasing, so an agent that leases office. So when I came in, I had no idea what I was doing, and then I realized that there was a lot of money to be made, and I stayed focused, and I just realized over time that I could, if I worked really hard, I could rise very fast through the ranks because I was just capable and driven. And I think the 2 key words for like success for an expat are capable and driven. Like if you have a past track record of being able to get shit done, then you will be able to do anything you want if you're really focused, because that's what the real value of an expat is. Just being able to accomplish tasks at a much more effective rate than maybe a local similar employee would be able to do. Right. So if you have that capability and you believe in yourself and you stay the path. So I stayed in the job. Next thing I knew, I was director of the whole department at like 27 years old. And I was actually the youngest director for Colliers in the world, apparently.
Amazing.
The CEO told me that, so I don't know if it's true. He was probably just blowing smoke, but
it sounds true to me, Mark, because I know people at Colliers. Yeah.
So it was that, that if you stay the course, you'll rise. The same thing in the US would have taken maybe 10 years or 15 years. But because there's nobody out here and there was nobody capable to do that particular job, I just stuck at it and they gave it to me because there's nobody else.
Right. I think there's a bit more to it than that. So you're being unnecessarily humble, because I do know about the struggles people go through. And so we've talked about some of the business advantages. What are some of the personal aspects where you feel you've grown as a result of being an expat? When you look back and think of that Canadian student, who came over all eager, and where you are today, what aspects of your personality do you feel have changed or developed?
Well, I've become, I used to be when I was young, I was very cocky and very confident, and I can do everything myself. But what I realized quite quickly is that you're only as strong as your network, and the more you rely on other people to help you, the more you can accomplish. So a lot of my success from business was whenever I had business problems, I would go to the best people in real estate in the industry that I became friends with, and I said, what should I do? And I would talk to 2 or 3 of them. They would give me their perspective. And so now I was basically functioning as a master real estate guy because I had the top 3 real estate guys giving me advice. So the advice I was giving to my client wasn't my own, but it was the best advice that I could make happen. So,
Right.
I mean, I really feel that one thing I've learned is to just use the people around you to help you as much as possible. And because you're an expat, there's something about being isolated in a foreign country that makes people support each other much more so than at home.
Yeah, I found that to be the case. And also, I think there's an element of status leveling. So when I lived in New York, Manhattan, people were super conscious of status and tended only to talk to people they perceived as being the same status as themselves. But, I'll regularly, as a newbie to Shanghai, I was talking to general managers and CFOs and vice presidents because
Right.
we're all leveled by the fact that we're expats.
Yes.
So does that chime with your experience as well?
Absolutely. Like I became friends with people that I would never in a million years be able to even touch back home, because
Right.
everybody is from a different country. Everybody comes from a different place. So the playing field has no expectations, and everybody's looking for good people that are smart, that are cool. They don't look at somebody and they're older and rich, so I can't talk to them or what have you. And especially in China, you have this culture where you just like go networking and everybody gives each other business cards. And it's so easy to talk to people. So I think it's really important that you take advantage of that, because it's not easy in North America,
No.
for sure. Or Europe. Like, it's very closed off. It's very structured. The society is, dragged down by years and years of just, reform. Whereas in an expat community, you don't have any of that structure. You just have a bunch of expats that are, making a living, and they don't really worry about that. And like a lot of famous people like came to China and hung out with me and my friends, and we didn't really treat them like they were famous, because we're so used to just everybody being on a level playing field.
Yeah.
So that's actually a good example of how it doesn't really matter what's your background or where you're from or how great you are, or all that matters is if you're a good person and if you're willing to help other people and add value to their lives.
Yeah, that's very much my philosophy as well. So you and I both know that probably every day we've lived in China, or nearly every day, we'll see the most remarkable and bizarre and strange things going on around us. If you had to point to 1 or 2 very funny memories about something that happened to you that was very amusing or different, is there something that springs to mind?
There's many examples
Yeah.
of funny and amusing stories. So I think one of the funniest stories was when I first came to China. I came with a friend, and we were working at we were English teachers at an international school for 1 month. We got our flights paid, we got our visas, it got us in the door. And in the morning, we'd go for a jog. And while we were, this is like Zhengzhou province, Zhengzhou in Henan province, and like 3 hours out of Zhengzhou, there's a tiny city called Lohe. So we're going for a run, and everybody was freaking out, like literally just going nuts. And they were like running away from us, and they were like running behind us because they'd never seen anybody run on the street before. They'd never seen anybody do exercise, period, probably. So we were running, and everyone would look at us and look behind us and start running and freaking out. And it was just hilarious because we were just like, what is going on? And we're like, oh, okay, no one's ever seen somebody run on the street.
So you started a riot there.
Yeah, it was pretty nuts. And then that same place, the kids would walk around with these giant locusts. Wow. And they were candy coated. So they were eating these huge, basically cockroaches.
Oh my God.
Candies. And it looked like, an episode of Fear Factor. And we were just freaking out. And these kids were just eating them like it was popcorn. Wow. And it was just like, that was like my first kind of like, wow, where am I kind of moment.
Yeah. Have many of those. And then let's sort of fast forward to today. Obviously, 2020 has been the most extraordinary year imaginable, and I'm sure many of us have had to adapt and change our plans as a result. How do you think, as a result of 2020, the expat world will change in future?
I think, a lot of China's like domestic economy is growing significantly. So the foreign businesses that came to China and expanded rapidly in like 2005 to 2010, that trend is kind of coming to an end because the domestic market is really booming.
Yeah.
So I think that all those expat companies were relying on expat employees, and the domestic companies don't. So I think that's a natural trend where the development of the talent pool is increased, and the domestic growth has been so strong that it's really curtailed the need for expats to do specific jobs. Like if I look at my industry, I'm the only one in China left that does investment real estate that's, not a Greater China foreigner, that's not based in Greater China. So, and then a lot of the expats that were in the office leasing and what have you, they've all left, and they've been replaced by Chinese or Western educated Chinese. I mean, English is an important part of it, so most of them have studied abroad. But I think the general trend is that China's just relying less on foreigners to do this kind of basic work. And it's becoming, the demand for foreigners is really increased in terms of like the higher level PhD engineers, R&D. That's where China's really focusing its attention on bringing in talent, not the lower level jobs, which used to be, dominated by expats.
Right. So a shift in demographic and probably in the sectors as well. And then what about you on a personal level? You're in Bali now. What's your intention, for the next coming years? Where's your vision going to take you, Mark?
So I think, my company is based in Shanghai, but we're working with companies in Hong Kong, the US, Europe, and my team, my core team is in China, is in Shanghai, but I have a business partner in New York. And one thing that I've learned from COVID, just working remotely, is that it's very possible to run a successful business without physically being there.
Right.
So I think for me, what I've realized is I don't need to be in China to have my business run successfully, but because but I've spent many, many years with my staff and, 16 years, like developing my client base. So I have so many relationships that I don't need to physically meet these people to maintain. I can just call them, they know me, and I can develop the business that way. So my future base camp, at least for the next 2 years, is going to be in Bali because it's a beautiful place.
It is.
My wife is very happy here, and we're very happy here. So I think this is my immediate future. And I think long term, we would probably go back to Holland or what have you. So I think in general, in terms of moving back to China and living there, I don't think that's going to happen for me.
No. And then if you were an expat, arriving fresh off the boat with your student visa clutched in your hand, or these days you would have to have a work visa. What advice, other than obviously build a great network, which I think is crucial, I would agree, is there any other advice you would give to a newly arrived expat in China?
Well, I mean, all the young guys, when they came to work for me in real estate, or they were asking me for advice, I would always tell them, I said, look, learning the local language is hugely valuable, and you're not going to do it by studying Chinese in Shanghai. Because I've never, I probably learned, a third of my Chinese in uni, a third of my Chinese in about a 6 months to 8 month span in the backcountry where nobody spoke English. And the other third I learned over the last, 14, 15 years. And I think for about an 8-year period, I would study once a week.
Right.
So just to get conversational, just so that I can build relationships with Chinese businessmen and work with them and show respect. Like, I don't think you need to be able to read and write and speak. And especially outside of Shanghai, it's not necessarily a good thing for a foreigner to speak fluent Chinese, because then they're like, okay, this is a university student that's pretending to be something else.
Yeah.
So, but I would say go to like Qingdao or go to, Zhejiang or wherever. I mean, just go to a very remote part of the country for like 1 to 2 months and don't speak a word of English for that entire time. Fantastic. Because you won't learn how to speak Chinese in Shanghai unless you study like extremely diligently, because everybody speaks English.
Yeah.
All your friends speak English, the taxi drivers know enough to get around. Like, you don't need to speak Chinese, but it's a huge asset to have, and at least at a conversational level, and to at least get by and make conversation and break the ice, and especially in the industry that you're in. So my real estate Chinese is, I can give presentations in real estate because that's all I studied.
Right.
So I would do that. I would just say, go to the bush where there's no foreigners, and study Chinese like a madman.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Mark. It's really been a pleasure to talk to you and find out how you've managed to be so incredibly successful. My takeaways are, have a strong vision, keep positive, stay focused on one profession, and you can rise very quickly, and then build a network of people you can truly rely on who share the same values. Learn the local language and keep going. Be resilient and gritty in this strange old world we live in. So thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks, Howard. It was fun.
Take care now.
Take care.
Many thanks for checking out Wealth Without Borders podcast. I'd love you to head over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. And if you'd be kind enough to do that, I would really appreciate it. And then if you want to know more about what I do, check out wealthwithoutborders.net.